Thanks for staying with us, everyone. In our last conversation, the economy played a very key or very significant part of that conversation. Now we're going to turn to the economy. The International Monetary Fund has urged the Nigerian government to enhance food security and reduce fragility as part of efforts to improve the country's growth. This recommendation is contained in a statement released following the conclusion of the IMF Executive Board's 2025 Article IV Consultation with Nigeria. The board highlighted priorities for the government, and that's including addressing security challenges, cutting bureaucratic red tape, improving agricultural productivity, bridging infrastructural gaps in electricity. The financial institution acknowledged the successful implementation of significant reforms over the past 2 years and commended the improvements in macroeconomic stability and resilience. Development Economist and President, Institute of Professional Economists and Policy Management, Professor Ken Ife joins me for more on this. Good to have you join us, Prof.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the IMF for a while and other international financial institutions have had a very shaky reputation within the continent for some of the policies they've advised governments to take. But this particular report seems to be very balanced. It did highlight some of the favorables, some of the things that this administration has done well, and then also, also pointed out the risk factors. I just want to get your own, reaction to that report.
Yeah, I think the report is positive, as you saw also on all the rating agencies' reports prior to the World Bank Spring meeting. It's positive and it's upbeat, without a doubt. But it also has some mixed message in there that we shouldn't take these things for granted, because there are potential things that can happen. Gains. Do we have any gains? Of course we have. A macroeconomic framework. There are many things that are stabilizing. For example, the two things that the president started with was to do away with the fuel subsidy. Now, but the challenge he had was that he never had all that money from the fuel subsidy. About 50% of that money was trapped by NNPC, according to World Bank report, in their inefficient operations. So what he had left, he had to give much of it to the state governments. That rose, their FAC rose from 700 billion to 1.6 billion, even 1.7. So they're having a good day, and that's why they're not complaining. And many of them are beginning to accomplish a lot more at subnational level. Then he had to kickstart his gas CNG program, but without a lot of money. And that was why the intervention of Dangote was a major boost to that program. Then what was left was shared between agriculture, where he gave 2 million bags of fertilizer and then palliatives here and there. But if he had all his money, he would have done a lot more. So that is why you're going to find in some of the contentious aspect of the report is that they are warning that poverty is still taking a hit. So, so we'll come to that. But what exactly has he done on improving the macroeconomic framework? What he has done was to stabilize the naira, because that was one thing he said from day one, that was going to abolish the gap between the foreign exchange rates, and he did. It took quite a while. The naira valuation, the devaluation of naira had to take place, very steep devaluation. But in the end of the day, central bank rose to the challenge, took a lot of measures, a lot of very, very important measures to suck out, we have 33 trillion naira ways and means. That is actually the middle name of that action is inflation. So they had to focus on sucking out that liquidity in the system. And then they have to do that by increasing the MPR rates and so many other measures. And they have to also go to even the commercial banks to arrest their non-net open position, to make sure your currency holdings must come down to no more than 20%, and so many other measures that even increase the confidence of the IOTs. These international money transfers, IMTs, they're now back in business, Diaspora remittance is coming on stream. So many measures that have actually stabilized the currency, and that the effect of stabilizing it is higher influx of foreign portfolio investment. But bear in mind that foreign portfolio investment is hot money, so it can vanish by the time you blink your eye, it's all gone. But at least they were coming in good stead,
Prof,
and I was able to.
If I may quickly come in, just one of the things that caught my attention was the projected GDP growth of 3.4%, which is very optimistic. I know you know very well that initially there was a projected growth, was it for 2024, that was 3.2% and later revised downwards to 2.9% by the IMF, but now we're seeing 3.4%. What is driving this optimism?
Well, quite a lot. In fact, my own personal view is that it could even be more than 5% because Nigeria has so many things going on that would, especially from 1st of January, when the tax reform takes their seats in, they will be going up much more than everybody's expecting. But from their perspective, they are looking at the higher investor confidence that is coming in with improvements in our macroeconomic governance. So that is one key one. And although it hasn't actually shown a lot more on the foreign direct investment, but they're beginning to have more commitments, FDI commitments. And then you could also see the likes of Shell put in $5 billion in upstream petroleum. So that's things are coming in. Then there are other things like the oil output has gone up. It used to be just around 1 million barrels a day. Now it's about 1.7 million barrels a day. And if you look at the GDP performances, the last 3 quarters, 4 quarters had significant rise in the oil GDP growth rate. So that went up, as well as the traditional high growth rate of service sectors. And service sectors are still performing, even though the banks are being hit, but they're still turning out huge profits. The ICT is moving because ICT underpins many aspects of our economy. So the service sector is growing, and that growth has been helped by the growth in the oil. But then other things like the refinery that came on, the Dangote refinery has actually caused, if you notice that in December, because of what they did on equalization and then maintaining prices, we didn't have all that price hikes and all these things. We had a drop in not GDP, we had a drop in inflation in December, when it is normally the cyclical peak of this. And that also helped the GDP as well. So there's so many things, there's quite a lot of them that are coming together to help the GDP. And then the bank have walked away from ways and means financing, which is very good because it means, look at 33 trillion naira printed. So they walked away with that. And then, we also hope that, and then you can even see the confidence in Eurobond that we are going for. People are over, we are having more people interested, and the bid shows that they outperformed the expectation. So nothing, and tightening of the monetary policy has also continued to rein in, even though we are no longer having any sharp rise in the monetary policy rate. And for obvious reason, because the rebasing of the economy flipped the what we call our negative real interest rate. Is now flipped into positive real interest rate, because now the interest rate is higher than the inflation. So that is positive. And then also don't forget that the mere fact that we did the removal of the subsidy pushed our foreign deficit, the performance, our foreign exchange deficit, they has actually moved from balance of payments. Their balance of payment moved from negative to plus $6.8 billion. That is serious money. And then that influences GDP, because don't forget that 4 items that drive the construct of GDP are household consumption, about 70 to 80%, government consumption, about 5 to 7%, they have investment. And the investment.
Prof, apologies for butting in. I have very limited time left, and I wanted to ask you, because this again is one of the areas that a lot of Nigerians, it concerns a lot of Nigerians. I just want to quote what the IMF said. It said, while the reform gains are encouraging, they have yet to benefit all Nigerians. They called for agile policy making to protect stability and reduce poverty. I want to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, they just said the obvious fact. The obvious fact is that how inclusive is the policy gains. That is the point. Because you could say, oh, the GDP is going to go up, and then the inflation is going to come down. How does it reflect? Does it actually trickle down? And then I can have given you an example that if the 50% of that subsidy was not tracked by NNPC, obviously would have had more money to spend to hit the ground. So that is one. But now, strong action is now being taken up on NNPC. The private sector is coming in far more aggressively. Just look at what Dangote is doing with 4,000 trucks and all of that. Price of that transportation cost will come down, and that will affect inflation coming down. It means that the money that they have is going to be conserved. And then when the 1st of January, the new tax reform enters the equation, it's going to be a lot of music to the ear of the ordinary citizen, because all of these measures will increase their disposable income. And with the way you remove the VAT from them, their VAT on health and VAT on food and VAT on education, you are increasing their disposable income. And then they will then buy more products. That means aggregate demand will go up. Inflation, GDP goes up. And same thing with MSMEs, that their threshold have increased. They also will have more output. So all of these things will combine to make people feel the reform far more on the ground than is at the moment. And this security hasn't actually abated. This is another thing, because that is one of the strongest structural factors that is preventing FDIs from coming in. And we need to get to terms with that and crush that anomaly. That's very, very, very important.
And quickly, Prof, I think I have about 2 minutes. The IMF also advised that we'll revise budget
go even during the fiscal policy strategy, during that fiscal strategy paper. So it just doesn't make sense to have that level of anticipation. The price of crude will continue to hover around 60 to 70 and no more. So that price just doesn't help anybody. But also we need to focus on more investment. There is a lot of money going on in infrastructure, but we have to make sure that this infrastructure address economic corridors, industrial corridors, housing corridors, commercial corridors, so that the possibility of repaying the money is assured, and then PPP can move in to maintain those infrastructure. But that's not what I'm seeing right now. Then also they needed to have more investment in agriculture, in lowering the electricity costs, which we are doing with renewable, but also health and education are very, very critical, because these are human capital development. Because, Japan doesn't have raw material. All these things we have here, they don't have. But they became number 2, which now number 3, on investment in human capacity. India, investment in human capacity. That's why they are where they are, taking over Silicon Valley. The 100 biggest countries in the world, companies in the world, are run by Indians. Human capacity investment. He's doing well by bringing student loan, widen that so that more children will go out. You're doing well on training of people on high-tech digital info. Double that 3 million to 10 million, so that we can actually beckon to our youth that it is not for tomorrow. The youth is for today, not for tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Prof, for your time. Very interesting conversation. Just a lot to talk about in this report, but limited time. A development economist and president, Institute of Professional Economists and Policy Management, Professor Ken Ife. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And that's Standpoint this week. Remember, you can watch the repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thanks for watching. I am Precious.